are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Can I ask you a question? Why do you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine?
I don't like getting sick. The virus will die. It will be easy to not catch it. Keep my family safe and keep playing soccer. Because I love being vaccinated.
What's your hope for everyone?
I hope everybody gets the vaccine to keep safe and strong. Be happy, having fun everywhere. Everyone stay safe and hope you get the vaccine.
Let's whoop it up for these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the cheering going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
This November, honor the many people who offer their lives for our freedom at the 2022 Heroes Appreciation Breakfast. Organizations, charities, and local residents are invited to celebrate the men and women that ensure our safety and security. Hear from guest speakers, live performances, and presentations from veterans, officers, and more. Save the date, November 8th, 9 to 10:30 a.m. at the new West Bloomfield Middle School. Call 248-451-1900 to register.
You're listening to your radio homes for the Megacast, 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake and 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. Today's Megacast begins now. Welcome to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Keefe. Today we'll be talking to a number of people about topics of interest and importance to Michiganders like you. Let's begin with what's making headlines on our website, civicscentertv.com, on our local news page. Our top story today comes from Tony Garcia at the Detroit Free Press. One of the University of Michigan football players repeatedly struck by a gaggle of Michigan State Spartans, including one who struck this player several times with a helmet following the game on Saturday in the rivalry game, and an incident in the tunnel, has now hired an attorney and is expected to pursue lawsuits against the involved players. Defensive back Jamon Green has hired attorney Tom Mars of the Mars Law Firm after he was assaulted and suffered a concussion during Saturday's post-game scuffle. The attorney Mars was quoted stating on behalf of his client, quote, "When college football players brutally attack a member of the opposing team with their helmets, resulting in the player suffering a concussion and other injuries, an apology won't suffice. There has to be severe consequences for this kind of misconduct. Not only does Jamon Green deserve to be compensated for his injuries, severe consequences in this case will deter others who might think that they can get away with brutally beating an opposing player and only getting a slap on the wrist. I've got news for the MSU players who did this to Jamon. They are going to feel the full wrath of the law," end closed quote. It would appear Michigan and the players affected, as well as their families and alumni, and really the entire university, all seem quite keen on pursuing criminal action against Spartan players, for which were suspended by Sunday evening following the Saturday incident. Head coach Mel Tucker of Michigan State held a press conference on Monday and took responsibility on behalf of the program for student athletes' poor decisions and misconduct, saying, quote, "We're not here to make any excuses for the behaviors on Saturday. They are unacceptable. It's also very important to say we honor the traditions of the Big Ten Conference, including the Michigan State-Michigan rivalry game, and we have a responsibility to uphold the values of this great university. We are deeply sorry to both the universities, the conference, our fans, alumni, supporters, and of course, all of our student athletes past and present." This, and closed quote. This story is far from over. It's the talk of the town and much of the state and the country on the sports front. At the very least, there's certainly more to be developed in this story. Yesterday, also hearing from head coach Jim Harbaugh of the University of Michigan, who had some complaints about not being contacted by Michigan State head coach Mel Tucker, but also then stating too that an apology from Coach Tucker would not suffice. So questionable what Coach Harbaugh wanted out of that entire situation. I think he just wanted something additional to gripe at in this rivalry. That being said, a lot of the fodder on social media, especially, and even in local sports talk on this matter, has been quite disgusting over the past couple of days since this incident, and certainly didn't get any better on Monday and Monday afternoon, as a lot of finger pointing, a lot of pointing blame from both sides of the Michigan and Michigan State rivalry, including some blaming Michigan players and Michigan coaching staff for inciting this incident altogether by simply going up their tunnel, and more complaints about having both teams using the same tunnel at Michigan Stadium being a cause for problems following 3 incidents in the last roughly 1 year, with 2021 there being an issue with Ohio State, and then 2 in the last 3 weeks with Penn State and Michigan State, both having incidents with Michigan players in that tunnel following their Big Ten matchups. That being said, most of the last 95 years that football has been played at Michigan Stadium, these sorts of incidents haven't happened. So is the tunnel a problem, or is it the conduct of players, the conduct of staff, and the interaction between these two teams that's the problem? Really, what it comes down to is better security measures need to be in place at the University of Michigan. They need to prevent both these teams from interacting with each other that closely, especially in a game that's that competitive, that's that emotional, as Michigan and Michigan State is, as Ohio State and Michigan is, and certainly when there's a chippy matchup and a top 10 matchup between teams like the University of Michigan and Penn State. But those pointing fingers at the University of Michigan and saying they incited that, it's ridiculous. And those from the Michigan side pointing back at Michigan State and saying, well, all this toxicity in the rivalry really came from the Mark D'Antonio era. I heard, it was Mark D'Antonio and Pat Narduzzi that caused all this toxicity. Before them, there wasn't any toxicity. No, you want it to go back to the days where this rivalry wasn't competitive. It was one-sided. Michigan dominated Michigan State, and Michigan State shut up because they had nothing to complain. They had nothing to punch back with, so to speak, verbally and professionally and cordially for the most part, in what was a rivalry that was a traditional rivalry. It's become toxic from the actions of both sides and from the actions of social media. It used to be, you'd see the psychos come out with these kinds of takes on the message boards. And for the most part, if you go out in real life, in the real world, if you went into Ann Arbor on Saturday, which I didn't, so I can't speak for that, but I can speak from my past interactions with Michigan fans during these rivalry weekends from last year at Spartan Stadium and in East Lansing, and around the general area on campus at Michigan State during this rivalry week, which was also quite chipping, was also quite competitive, that when you actually are having those interactions between Michigan State fans and Michigan fans, it is by and large cordial. It's when you go to social media and you get the keyboard warriors that are often anonymous, often aren't showing their faces, aren't showing their names, aren't putting themselves and their reputations on the line. That's when it gets toxic. It can be an issue on both sides. It can be toxic from both sides, and still have both sides be both in the wrong and one side being partially in the right. That's just a fact of the matter. And that's I hate to rant on that story again, but there's been so much garbage out there in the fodder and in sports talk about this and outside, using colorful language and frankly coded racist language in regards to Michigan State players, Michigan State coaching staff, some of whom had zero involvement in that scuffle whatsoever. And then the players that have been involved and have been shown to be involved so far have, for the most part, been held accountable. There are some that are still questionable, and whether or not they have been held properly accountable for, that will come in the coming days, and we'll see more of it. It's not over yet. It's literally, this is just getting started and getting unpacked. That's why neither sides are commenting on it, because it's ongoing. We'll move on. Also making headlines today from the staff at Bridge, Michigan. Some good news out of East Lansing yesterday, as Michigan State University Board of Trustees officials named Provost Teresa Woodruff as the new interim president, succeeding Samuel Stanley, who announced his resignation in mid-October. To some, this is a surprising decision maybe by the board, considering Woodruff's support in the past of President Stanley, especially in the wake of the departure of Sanjay Gupta from the Broad School of Business, a point of contention between the outgoing president and many of the trustees on the board of trustees itself. Perhaps this is a move of diplomacy by the board following votes of no confidence from both the faculty senate and the associated students of MSU. Previously, a coalition of staff, faculty, and students put their full support behind naming Woodruff the interim president. Now it's time for the board to continue that diplomacy and that diplomatic approach, if that is exactly what they were going for here. They are leaders, but they have a history of self-righteousness, infighting, outfighting, and speaking out of turn as individuals and not as an entity that represents all that they are associated with and all that are associated with that great university. Hopefully, this is a step in the right direction. Woodruff will begin her new role on Friday. Finally, making headlines from Carol Thompson at the Detroit News. Get your visits to Belle Isle Conservatory in soon, as the renovations are coming up, and soon the Detroit Staple will close here in November. On November 14th, the conservatory will begin $10 million in renovations to revamp the iconic upper dome of the facility, made of striking glass and developed by legendary architect Albert Kahn in 1904. Said a DNR official on the renovations, quote, "Besides the recent renovations in 2019, there has not been a major capital investment to the conservatory since the 1950s. The goal is with this project is to address the scope of work currently identified, ensure efficiencies in construction staging, and eliminate the need to close the Palm House in the future," and closed quote. The $10 million will come mostly from American Rescue Plan Act or ARPA funds, with $2.5 million out of the $10 million from private donations to the Belle Isle Conservancy. All those headlines are on our website, civiccentertv.com, on our local news page. We have a great show ahead on this Tuesday edition of the MegaCast. Up next, we'll talk about how a partnership between a local nonprofit and an author has led to a new book by that author himself. We'll be joined by him next. Stay tuned. You're watching and listening to the MegaCast.
In the face of COVID-19, staying healthy is important. And now the same is true as we face the flu. Influenza has the potential to infect millions, putting lives and the healthcare system at risk. Fortunately, it's easy to protect yourself. The flu vaccine is safe and effective, and with COVID-19 still spreading, it's essential. To see how you can hit this virus head-on, visit michigan.gov/flu. Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date. Let's relish these moments, made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the festivals going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the MegaCast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show looking into all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find all of our partnering stations with links to those stations and find all of our full programs and each individual episode on demand. civiccentertv.com/megacast. Joining us now on the program is Andy Gutman. He is an author at Gut Check Publishing and recently had quite the partnership with Brilliant Detroit that led to the inspiration for his new book. Andy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks so much for having me here today.
Appreciate having you on. So your new book is called Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit. Tell us first about this book. What story this is telling, and what life lessons it's providing to the public, and then a little bit of what inspired this project to come together.
Yeah, thanks for asking. The book really, I like to think of it as a book done by the kids. All of the children get author credits on this, and it really came about because in a prior book I wrote called Be Kind, I donated some of the profits to this nonprofit organization and just loved what they did. The more I got to know their CEO, Cindy Eagleton, who's one of the kindest people I know, the more I wanted to work with her and be a part of all the great things that she and Brilliant Detroit do for the city of Detroit and all the kids and families they help. So having done that, I asked Cindy if we could work with the kids. And so I brought out my team to come every Saturday to one of their houses in Detroit. And it was in the height of COVID. So we're all masked up and all the kids would sit at picnic tables and we would talk about what lessons they learned, what was important to know in life, like what does being kind mean to you? What are your big dreams that you have in life? What makes you special and unique? And so they would draw out what their perspective was on that. And it turned into a great book that we can share with everyone else. And these young people, ages anywhere from 2 to 8, are now authors that are published. And it's very exciting for them and for all of us.
Yeah, it's such a great story too, because so often we think about the relationship between adults and children, being the adults are giving all the life lessons to kids. And there's so much that we can also learn as adults from children of all different ages and through those interactions with these individuals. And so for you as an author, of course, you're a storyteller, you have a keen ability to find the story and a little bit of everything that goes on in our lives in all different facets. But when did really this relationship between you and those at Brilliant Detroit turn into something that you thought, you know what, I'm learning so much from these kids and so much from this organization. I want to turn this into something that other people can also learn from?
Yeah, there was something really great just from day one of getting together with the kids and the staff that work out there. There's a purity to the thought process of children and something really special about the lessons they can teach you. Their perspective on life comes from such a good, wholesome place that it really is amazing. So from the first session we had, I was really excited to be a part of helping them become authors, but more than that, helping other kids to realize that they too can achieve any dream they really want to. So it was just an exciting first day. Something really nice about the homes that Brilliant Detroit provides and the atmosphere in which kids can not only grow but be prepared as they get ready for kindergarten.
More information on the book can be found at gutcheckbooks.com, and you can also there purchase life lessons from Brilliant Detroit for $9.50. Proceeds from this book are being donated to Brilliant Detroit as well. And so as you're putting this book together, of course, you wanted to bring some of those lessons you've learned from the kids and, of course, bring some good press to Brilliant Detroit and the excellent work that they're doing in the city of Detroit and supporting these kids in so many different ways. But why was it important for you as an author to not only publish this book in partnership with these kids, but also make sure that this book and all the proceeds that were going from the sales of these books go right back into that organization so they can do even more of this great work?
Yeah, the organization just does amazing work. And, I have a day job. I work for an amazing commercial real estate company called the Farbman Group, and I earn a living from that. And I love being a part of it. But my books were inspired originally by my daughter, and that's how I started being an author, was putting together books so she would have a legacy. And so to me, they're a way for me to give back to the community. And I really just fell in love with the Brilliant Detroit organization. So I thought if I'm going to do something to help the community, this is one amazing organization that I just want to see continue to succeed.
Again, more information on Andy and his books can be found at gutcheckbooks.com. Gutcheckbooks.com. We can also get a copy of life lessons from Brilliant Detroit as well, where the proceeds will go right back to Brilliant Detroit. You can also learn more about the organization by visiting their website at brilliantdetroit.org. Brilliantdetroit.org for more information. We've also had Cindy Eagleton on from this program from Brilliant Detroit, civiccentertv.com/megacast. or go to our on-demand page at civiccentertv.com. Just search for Brilliant Detroit to find that and learn even more about some of the work that they're doing each and every day and some projects they have planned as well. civiccentertv.com/megacast for that. We're joined by Andy Gutman, who is the author. Andy Gutman, who is the author of Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit, and this is your 6th book. But it's really the first one that's kind of like this, where your previous books have really been more traditional children's books. So tell us about that change in your methods from your past 5 books, and how that's further inspired you for stories of your future.
Yeah, the books really all start from songs that I wrote, and every one of them really starts that way. And it's an amazing thing, because when I tell people you can really accomplish anything in the world, you can. And I'm a guy who can't sing, or at least I shouldn't. I can't play any musical instruments, but I write lyrics to songs, and I bring singers and producers together to put them together. And so that's usually how my books start, is as a song. In this case, it was a little different. We do have a couple of songs on the website for Brilliant Detroit. But this was a different process, and I really like to think of it, instead of as my 6th book, I think of it as the kid's first book. That to me is an even better answer.
And you mentioned too that your writing really came from your love of music. You also produced song accompaniments for each of your books, and so tell us about those accompaniments, how they complement these books, and any plans for a musical accompaniment to go along with Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit.
Yes, absolutely. So, like I said, most of my books do start as songs. In this case, it was reversed. But there are 2 songs that are out there. They're both called Brilliant, and one is in Spanish, one is in English, because the home that I work with these kids, many of them, their primary language was Spanish, or at least a really strong secondary language. So I wanted to make sure we had the book and the music in both languages. But the kids inspired some really, what I think is really fun and entertaining music that they can sing along to and dance with while they enjoy the activities in the book and reading the book.
We're joined by Andy Gutman on today's edition of the Megacast, author at Gut Check Publishing, and of course the author of Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit. You can purchase the book for $9.50 on Amazon, as well as at gutcheckbooks.com. Proceeds go right back to Brilliant Detroit, which you can also learn more about, get involved, and of course donate to this nonprofit organization at brilliantdetroit.org. That is brilliantdetroit.org for more information on the organization that was the inspiration behind Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit. And of course, we don't want to give too much away. We want people to read the book and gain all those life lessons themselves. But Andy, give us an example of one of your favorite life lessons that's included in this book, or maybe wasn't included in this book, that really inspired you from your time interacting with these kids and with Brilliant Detroit.
Yeah, one of the things that the lessons that we teach in the book is to dream big. And that's one of my favorite things in life is, you can accomplish anything you really set your mind to. There's no limitations to what any of us can do. And that's one of my favorite lessons. I love listening to the kids and looking at their drawings that talked about what they were dreaming about being when they grow up. And of course, now they're all, they have that addition to their resume. They're all accomplished authors. So I can't wait to see what they do next.
More information, again, can be found on brilliantdetroit.org or by visiting Andy's website, gutcheckbooks.com, where you can learn more about each of his 6 books now, including Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit, and purchase the book for $9.50 on his website, too, with the proceeds going right back to Brilliant Detroit. Andy, anything else we should know at this time we haven't discussed about Life Lessons from Brilliant Detroit?
The one other thing I would tell you is that these books are also available on Amazon.com. So feel free to get them there as well. They get a little more traffic than my website, but I love the fact that they're available in multiple ways.
Multiple ways to learn a lot of lessons from some pretty impressive kids and a great organization in Brilliant Detroit. Andy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
We'll take a break on the Megacast. On the other side, we'll be joined by one of our regular guests here on the program. Jason Brown from the Brown Report joins us next. You're watching and listening to the Megacast.
Now that the vaccine is available for children 5 and up, why do you recommend it?
Kids are part of the community and they can spread COVID.
We're seeing both healthy children getting sick from the virus as well as children with underlying health conditions.
They can easily bring the virus home to other people that are vulnerable and make them sick as well.
This vaccine can change that and keep children safe.
It's essential that your children get vaccinated to protect them, to protect your families, and to protect those in the community around you.
I'm feeling good.
Let's savor these moments. Made possible by the COVID-19 vaccine. Keep the dining out going by keeping yourself protected and your COVID-19 vaccines up to date.
Welcome back to the Megacast, our live local daily TV, radio, and streaming show about all things Michigan. I'm Tyler Kieft. Learn more about the program on our website at civiccentertv.com/megacast, where you'll find all of our partnering stations and links to them on TV, radio, and on the web all across the Great Lakes State, and find our full shows and each individual interview on demand. Again, civiccentertv.com/megacast for all of that information. Joining us now on the Megacast is a stock market coach as well as an options trader. His website is thebrownreport.com, and you can also find a whole lot of information there about investing, about learning to invest, and of course find Jason Brown's podcast as well. Jason, thank you so much for joining us once again. Appreciate having you on.
Tyler, thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on. And usually when we're talking to each other, we're talking about different trends in the market or different methods that people will use to work their way through the markets, work their way through stock trading or investing to bolster their portfolio. But today, let's talk about ways that people can leverage their money investing in alternative assets. First off, define for us what it means to have alternative assets and how that can really also be helpful in someone's investment portfolio.
Yeah, so when we think about an asset class, typically we think about stocks and bonds. That's the first asset class that most people's minds go to, but real estate is an asset class as well, but those are traditional asset classes. So when we talk about alternative is really just the things that most people don't think about or that people run to in times where the normal asset classes aren't working. So when real estate is not working, when the stock market technically is not working, what's the alternative? Sometimes the alternative is gold, right? People move into gold, but I want to go alternative. So I guess alternative squared. So here's something that most people may not have thought about as an alternative asset class that I've recently dabbled in myself. Number one is watches. And number two is cars. Most people don't think about cars as an asset class, but I'll give you a perfect example. I bought a Ferrari, and I know it sounds weird. I never thought I'd be live streaming saying, hey, I bought a Ferrari. But here's the point of the story. I heard about investing in these Ferraris and these cars and that they hold their value. So I bought a Ferrari just thinking, hey, I'll try it out. I don't plan on making any money, but let's see if I can not lose any money or drive a Ferrari for not that much. Well, I ended up obviously driving, obviously you don't know, but I drove the Ferrari for about 2 years and actually sold it for about $35,000 more than I paid for it. And so that was my first real introduction into these alternative asset classes, learning that sometimes these cars, when they're produced in a limited number. And once they cancel the production, it becomes either a collector's item or people are willing to pay more for it because they can't get it anymore. And then you add the COVID boom on top of that, or the backup of cars. And then you could really see this increase in price in this alternative asset class. The second one is watches. I recently I say recently, within the last 2-3 years, started studying watches. And when you look at Rolexes, you look at Richard Mille, you look at Patek Philippe's, I'm talking these high-end watches, and sometimes even the entry-level watches like a Movado, why shouldn't I say a Movado, maybe Omega, maybe a Breitling. These watches hold their value and they only make so many quantities of them. So there is a whole group of people that invest in these alternative assets like cars and watches, and they actually increase by 10, sometimes 20 and 50%, where you're able to get a return and be able to hold on to a nice piece of jewelry or drive a fun car.
So when people are investing in these alternative assets, so they're looking into investing in them, particularly who should be in those positions, or who should be then exploring, okay, well, I've made X amount in the stock market, in stocks and in bonds, and maybe it's time to diversify a little bit and go into these alternative assets. What's a good time to start exploring those?
Well, the best time to start exploring them is, right now, right? Is whether you have money or you don't have money, the best time to explore investing either directly into the stock market, real estate, or into alternative assets is right now, because you won't be able to spot an opportunity unless you've already been studying and looking for it and preparing for it. And then when it's time to switch to the alternative asset, you usually need to make a quick decision and not at that point start studying what is an alternative asset and is it going to work. Now, for those who should consider trying it, you definitely want to master the tried and true industries first, like the stock market or like real estate, because once you start to go into alternative assets, if you don't have the money to sit inside of a watch or a car, if you don't have a garage or a place to store it where it's not going to get scratched or broken into, that could become an issue. If you don't have the money to keep up on the maintenance of it until you sell it, or carry the insurance policy on a watch or a house until you can, or a car until you can sell it, then you might not want to dip into those alternative assets just yet. But that shouldn't stop you from starting to study and learn about those alternative assets. And then the other thing is, the reason why you want to start studying about it now is, in every asset class, there's risk. So in the stock market, you buy something, you risk it going down. You buy a rental property, you risk the person not paying rent or kind of tearing up your property. Well, in the alternative asset class, there's also risk, because if you buy a watch and you buy it secondhand off eBay or from another person, the risk is that, how do you know you're not getting a fake watch? So if you don't know what a real Rolex looks like, you could have just donated $10,000 to $20,000 and bought a fake, and the whole alternative asset investing just went down the drain. If you also invest in these kind of collector cars or these exotic cars, there's a risk that, if you're going to start driving it or doing something outside of collecting it, holding it, maybe taking it out a little bit, but if you exceed the mileage or you get into an accident, that kind of changes how you can exit that alternative asset position. So you want to start studying for it now, but you also want to be in the position to take care of the alternative asset when you have it, because you're storing it at your house or your private residence versus in a bank or in an account with your broker.
We're joined by Jason Brown from the Brown Report. You can read more information on all of his different tips, tricks, and extensive research into the stock market and trading at thebrownreport.com. That is thebrownreport.com to keep up to date with Jason and send him any information or questions that you may have. Thebrownreport.com. And with any sort of investment, there's going to be volatility, there's going to be risk and reward. In terms of investment in alternative assets like we've been speaking of today, how does that compare to stock trading or investing in the market in terms of risk and volatility?
Well, the good thing about alternative assets is that someone will always want like a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. So what's cool about it is your risk of it going to zero is very slim to none. Similar to if you're buying a good company like Amazon, like the risk that it's going to zero would mean Amazon just went out of business or someone found a better distribution network and a better way to build an e-commerce platform. And so when you look at a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, you can at least go to sleep and feel good that the volatility is going to be very, very small, because someone always wants that car and someone in a certain financial class can always afford that car. especially at the right price. Same thing with like a Rolex or some type of watch that is, well sought after. There will always be a market for it. So unlike the stock market, you won't see like a Rolex go from 20,000 to 5,000 and then back up to $20,000. So like that type of volatility doesn't exist. You'll see it maybe at 20,000, maybe it fluctuates down to 18, then goes back up to 22 maybe, but you won't see those big, 50% off sales happening in the exotic car and the luxury market. And typically the people who have those assets are not people who are affected by interest rates fluctuations or getting laid off from their job. They might be business owners, entrepreneurs, investors. So they don't really have fire sales. People think like, oh, the economy is going to be bad. Everyone's going to sell their Rolex. Everyone's going to sell their Ferrari. But typically that group of people is kind of insulated from fire sales. They don't just, I have to unload this today or else. So you see less volatility, less people just dumping their cars in that income bracket. So that actually reduces the volatility. Now, I know sometimes when people think of alternative assets, there's also Bitcoin and those things, but I wanted to bring in a totally different asset class that people may not have thought about, like cars and watches.
Again, more information can be found and helpful tips at thebrownreport.com. Information on this, on the market, on trading and investing as well. And in terms of the long-term gains that you can have from investing in these alternative assets, how does that compare to stock trading and certainly to investing, especially when you're a well-informed investor on either side?
So one of the differences, you're not going to see a car or a watch usually go up 200%, 300% like a stock can. So just like you're not going to see a car or a watch you typically fall 50 or 100%, you're also not going to see it rise 50 to 100%. So that's going to be, or like 100, 200, 300%, like a Tesla, then split and then rise again, then split like Amazon did, like Tesla did. So you won't really see those type of gains in those alternative assets, but that's why they're alternative. They're used as a hedge to offset, like maybe I won't make a killing, but also won't get killed. And sometimes that's equally as important when investing. And that's why people look for alternatives. They say, hey, I don't necessarily need to make a bunch of money. I just don't want the pile of cash that I have to go to zero. And so that's going to be one of the big differences between, alternative assets and traditional investing in the stock market. I think the second thing that's going to be a little bit different is you can hold a stock maybe 10, 20, 30 years. Again, it may go up, split, pay dividends and continue to earn money. Most of the time, a car or a watch will hit its max value. It doesn't just typically keep going up or paying you dividends or anything like that. And so the watch and the car alternative asset game is typically a game of volume. Maybe you buy one car, you sell it. You buy another one, you sell it. And so you're going to have to keep doing it over and over again, turning over newer editions of the car or picking up different collectible versions of a car or a watch and doing it over and over again to see consistent returns if you don't just want a one-time wonder. And I do want to say this. I know I talked about cars and watches, and that's sometimes can be considered a guy thing. This also exists in like the purse world with Hermes bags and all these unique Burberry bags that come out that are limited edition collectible items for women. The same thing exists in that field as well. Some of these bags they purchase for maybe $1,000, $2,000 end up selling on the aftermarket for $3,000, $4,000 because they're limited editions. You can't get them anymore.
More information, again, thebrownreport.com. You can find a lot of information, resources, and learn to invest smartly and informatively in the stock market and trade on the market as well with Jason and his team at The Brown Report, thebrownreport.com. On alternative assets, in terms of maintenance, I would imagine that's a huge part of that investment, maintaining these different products that you are holding and making sure that their value certainly doesn't decrease. And in some cases, that maintenance can actually increase the value. How much of a consideration does that need to be before somebody invests in some watches or certainly in cars and goes into the alternative asset market?
So maintenance is a normal part of owning an alternative asset, and typically maintenance can actually improve the value because people want to know that it was taken care of. And so if you start to look into buying a secondhand watch, some of the questions that, or if you start selling them specifically, one of the questions that you'll get asked is, when was the last time this watch was serviced? Because people want to know that the movement, because they're buying the Swiss movement in the watch, which is, there's no battery in it. It's all movement based on your wrist. It recharges itself, different things like that. But people want to know that the movement has been serviced, has been oiled, has been checked, and is in good working condition. Same thing with the car. Most people think, oh, I'm just going to buy a Ferrari or I'm going to buy a Lamborghini. I'm just going to stick it in my garage and just going to let it sit for 10 years. Well, actually, cars that sit typically have more problems than cars that are driven, or at least the tires have been moved so that it doesn't collect flat spots, and then you need new tires, and you're like, they're brand new, but it's been sitting, so it's been sitting with a lot of weight and pressure, and so it's collected flat spots. People want to know that the oil has been changed. If the oil's just sitting at the bottom of the pan or at the bottom of, all the wires, it can start to rot through the wires and through the cabling instead of it being because it needs to be kind of rotated on a regular basis. You need to start it up, drive it, make sure the oil is changed, make sure it's maintained. And that $2,000 to $3,000 a year maybe that you may spend on maintenance actually increases their value because they want to buy from someone that they believe has maintained this good. They don't want to buy a car only to find out it needs a new engine, only to find out the oil's never been changed, or a watch to find out the movement has never been checked and now it needs to be replaced at the same price, if not more, than buying a brand new watch.
Yeah, outside of those cryptocurrencies and such, and some of those solid currencies like gold or silver, if you're investing in an alternative asset, like you said, those watches, those cars, those boats, houses, certainly they're all functional objects and functional things, and so the biggest value in them is their functionality, and otherwise they're just nice decorations, and nice decorations typically don't maintain that value for very long. Jason, appreciate your time, appreciate you joining us. Before we let you go, at this time in the stock market, we know we're experiencing so many ebbs and flows and fluctuations. Anything else that we haven't discussed today regarding trading or investing that people should be keeping in the back of their minds right now as they explore their assets in the market?
I think people should just keep in mind that we're getting close to the end of the Fed hiking their rates, which means the bottom may be somewhere near. I know sometimes we wake up and we hear doom and gloom all the time, but the reality is the Fed is raising interest rates so that they can bring inflation down. I just saw that home interest rates just hit 7%. Keep in mind, that may be bad news short term, but that's good news long term, so that prices of houses can't keep selling over 100,000, 50,000 over asking price. And so as the competition comes down, because the ability to borrow money is more expensive, the ability to get the home that you want without paying over a ridiculous price is going to start to come back into place. And the same thing with some of these normal assets with the stocks. You got to think, stocks like Apple or Amazon that were trading at $3,000 are now trading off the split basis at, $115. This is now an opportunity for you to afford something that you used to not be able to afford. And I think if you give it enough time, you're going to see the values increase because we don't get worse at e-commerce. We don't get worse at technology. We're not getting worse at electric cars. We're only getting better, and they're only becoming more prevalent.
Get these kind of tips regularly from Jason and his The Money Markets and Mindsets podcast on thebrownreport.com. Jason, thanks so much for joining us.
Tyler, thanks for having me.
Appreciate having you on, Jason. And again, all that information on thebrownreport.com, thebrownreport.com for that info and those resources. Joining us now on the Megacast as we continue on is one of over 325 charities and nonprofits supported on the Share Detroit platform. Joining us now are Mike Smith and Tamika Merriman from Vista Maria on today's edition of the Megacast. Thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you.
Appreciate having both of you on today. Okay, so actually it's just going to be Tamika Merriman, the foster care program manager, joining us today from Vista Maria. So Tamika, first off, tell us a little bit about the history as well as the mission of your organization.
Yeah, so Vista Maria has been around since 1839. We were founded by Sister Mary Euphrasia, who had a want to fulfill a need for women and children. We have been here for over 100 years servicing women who may have had struggles in their life, may have been abandoned or orphaned. And we continue to do that work today by servicing over 228 clients in the community and on our residential campus.
Again, more information can be found at vistamaria.org as well. And so tell us more about the inspiration, the person behind it, Sister Mary Euphrasia, and why she was so important to the founding of this organization and more importantly, to the great work that you do supporting so many people in our local area.
Yeah, so Sister Mary Euphrasia, she started this work at 18. She was originally from France, and she joined a charity in France, Sisters of Our Lady Charity. So she started that at 18 and then quickly rose to a leadership and running the actual organization at the age of 29. And so after all the work that they were doing servicing women and children, she said, why not take this worldwide? And so eventually she moved to different parts of the world helping women and children. And she served for like 33 years. And so her mission, that want to be there for people who were underserved and didn't have a voice. That is kind of what Vista Maria stands on today, to be that voice, help women and children, and now boys too, because we service, boys in the community as well, but give people a voice who couldn't, speak for themselves, and give them everything that they need so that they can stand on their own. Teach them to be fearless and bold and advocate for themselves, and we'll do it for them until they can do it for themselves.
Once again, you can find more information as well as how to volunteer and donate with Vista Maria by visiting vistamaria.org. That is vistamaria.org for more information as well as contact information to get in contact with the organization and get involved with their main phone number. Also 313-271-3050, 313-271-3050, info@vistamaria.org. is their email for more information and questions as well. And so as you're doing all of this work, it's really important because there's so many different resources that need to be provided to people that go through some of the trauma and the abuse that those that you're providing these services to go through. And they are so extensive. They go from, of course, adoption and foster care to housing and education as well. Just how far reaching are these services that are being provided to victims of abuse and human trafficking and such that are served by your organization?
Great question. So we do have several different programs currently. As you mentioned already, we have a human trafficking program. We have Journey to Success, which is what we refer to as the extra. All of our children receive mental health services and therapy services, and Journey to Success actually goes above and beyond that to provide expressive therapy as well as recreational therapy, leadership and life skills training. We also have foster care, which is what I currently supervise, foster care and adoption. We provide care to over 200 children in the community in foster homes. And then we try really, really hard to reunify those families, and there's just not enough foster homes. So just getting that word out over the fact that there are 11,000 children in the state of Michigan who are in need of foster home placements. So we're spreading that knowledge and trying to get more people engaged and involved in fostering. And then there are times when we cannot reunify, and that's when we rely on our adoptions team to go out and find forever families for these children who can no longer be returned back home to their parents. Sometimes adoption is not an option and the children are older and they just don't want to be adopted. Then that's when we have independent living. And that's both here on campus for kids who do not have supportive families. They can use our agency as a support for them and live here on campus, as well as independent living in the community, where we have been able to find host homes and people to say, yes, I'll take this teen and teach them how to live independently and teach them independent living skills, how to grocery shop, how to open a bank account, how to balance a budget, how to manage their money. Those services we are asking for assistance with as well. Maybe you don't want to foster younger children, but you can be an independent living host home provider for those children as well.
More information can be found on vistamaria.org or by going to sharedetroit.org and going under there, find a nonprofit section where you can find more information on Vista Maria, as well as over 300 other charities and nonprofits across our local area. We're joined by Tamika Merriman, the Foster Care Program Manager at Vista Maria, on today's edition of the Megacast. And Tamika, people in these kinds of situations that are in the foster care system, certainly those that have been victims of abuse or human trafficking, it can be tough for these individuals to come forward, to seek these resources, to know where to go for these kinds of resources. So how does your organization get in contact with these individuals to help provide some of these interventions that are critical and in some cases are life-changing?
Yeah. So most of our kids are referred to us by Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and they contact us directly and say, hey, we have this child or this family that may be in need of some assistance. There are other times where we can actually get referrals in from schools. So we have a wraparound program that currently services kids who may not have yet been involved with Child Protective Services or Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. They can call our main number directly and get in touch with our wraparound program, where we can use that as more of a prevention piece and get in there before any removals or before any contact with MDHHS. But they can always reach us at the main number that you provided, 313-271-3050, and then we can put you in contact with any one of the leaders or managers that are over these programs. You can contact me directly, myself, or our director, Mike Smith, and we would definitely point you in the right direction.
More information can be found vistamaria.org, and you can also call them 313-271-3050, 313-271-3050, and also the toll-free number 800-7-VISTA-6. 800-7-VISTA-6 is their toll-free number, and you can also send them an email, info@vistamaria.org. That's info@vistamaria.org. And in terms of helping this organization to continue to do its great work, it's always going to be, for a nonprofit organization, a community effort to provide those services and to provide those resources. At this time, what are some of the most critical resources or forms of assistance that the community can help Vista Maria with to continue to then help all these individuals that they're doing in so many different ways?
Yeah, so we definitely always need mentors. We're looking for mentors and volunteers. We actually have a volunteer services department where if you call that main number and say, hey, I'm interested in partnering with Vista to see how I can volunteer, or I definitely would like to mentor a child that's in one of your programs, you can definitely call the main number and do that. We also have a wish list that's on Amazon's website. We do have several clients who actually live here on our campus where you can purchase a toy for the holiday. Christmas is coming up. Maybe it's a doll or something that you see on our wish list that you can purchase, and it will be sent directly here to our Vista Maria campus. Also, just invite us out. We would love to participate in a community event. Maybe you're a part of our church and you're going to do like a community day, or you can invite us to a service. We'd be more than happy to come and set up an information table and just pass out literature, letting people know about the needs for our children and our youth. We can definitely partner. We like to do spaghetti dinners. We'll come and bring the spaghetti. Just invite us out and we'll come out and let you guys know exactly what the needs of our youth are. Yeah, just collaboration is really the best way to help us.
You can get involved by going to vistamaria.org/volunteer, learn more about their volunteer opportunities, and of course, get in contact with Vista Maria as well. You can give them a call, 313-271-3050, or send them an email, info@vistamaria.org. If you're interested in volunteering or helping their organization in a different way, or visit their website too, vistamaria.org. for more information, as well as on sharedetroit.org under the Find a Nonprofit section. You can also donate on both of those websites as well. Tamika, another minute or so with you today before we'll say goodbye. Any other information we haven't discussed yet about Vista Maria that the public should know about, or other upcoming projects or initiatives that people might want to get involved in to help all these different individuals that Vista Maria is assisting on a daily basis?
Yeah, I would just say contacting our volunteer services would probably be the biggest thing right now. It's the holiday season. A lot of our kids are away from their families, that connection that they are missing, wanting to, feel like it's the holidays. So anything you can do as far as donating any one of our wish list items would be greatly appreciated. And then refer a friend, tell somebody about us, let people know that, hey, there are 11,000 children who need a loving home, even if it's just temporary. Maybe you just have a room, one child at a time, we can make a difference.
More information can be found at vistamaria.org as well as sharedetroit.org. We've been joined by Tamika Merriman, the foster care program manager at Vista Maria. Tamika, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting us.
ShareDetroit.org is where you can find more information on Vista Maria, as well as over 325 other charities and nonprofits. You can also find direct information at vistamaria.org. That does do it for today's edition of the MegaCast. More information and to find us on demand, civiccentertv.com/MegaCast. Big thank you to our dedicated crew, Calvin Brown and Jared Clark at the studio of My Michigan TV. We'll return